everyone, I'm Jessica Stutzman and welcome back to the Millcreek Government Channel. When litter debris is thrown on the ground, it gets washed into the storm drains and then directly into our waterways. Plastic is the most prevalent type of marine debris found in our oceans and Great Lakes. Plastic debris can come in all shapes and sizes, but those very tiny pieces of plastics are called microplastics. In addition to potentially injuring aquatic life, litter decreases oxygen levels in the water when it decays. Joining us today to discuss litter and what can be done about it is Dr. Sherry Mason, Director of Sustainability for Penn State Barron, and Lynn Armel, the Sustainability Coordinator for Erie County. Sherry, thank you so much for joining us here again on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and call me Sam.
Sam, thank you so much. I love having you on the show. Again, your research, your knowledge of plastic pollution is unmatched. We're so glad to have you here studying in our own Lake Erie, in our own backyard. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to share what we find with the greater public, because in the end, that's the solution to this problem, is really kind of that educational component and making people aware of the issues. In your intro, you mentioned like when litter is thrown on the ground, and I do think that a lot of people, when they hear that word litter, they think of people like throwing stuff out of their car window. And what's really interesting is actually in our most recent research project, where we're looking at these litter booms, which I can explain more about what those are in a second, but we end up finding a lot of things, that I don't think people kind of think of as being litter, right? I mean, it really kind of underscores the fact that a lot of litter is unintentional, right? Kids just outside playing ball, playing Nerf darts, and their moms call them into dinner, they go to bed, it rains overnight, and they wake up the next morning and they may not even think about the fact that their stuff has then just washed down the storm drain and down into the rivers and creeks. And they don't
get a call now and they're gonna want their football back.
Probably, or maybe their birthday balloon.
Yes. My daughter would be devastated if that was her birthday balloon that washed down the storm drain. So that's a great explanation, because I do think that everybody thinks, litter, how could you do that? That's so terrible. I know the other day I was eating at a local coffee shop, and 1 minute we were fine, and the next minute we had a Lake Erie gust of wind come and blow all of our napkins off the table and through the parking lot. And I did go running for all of them. But again, like you said, little kids, or it's bedtime or it's dinner time, or something distracts them, and look, they're losing huge toys. This isn't just tiny pieces of plastic. These are huge.
These are quite large, yeah. And then, but these break into those smaller and smaller pieces, that you find. And so we're picking up things like this, which obviously used to be a red Solo cup, right? And again, I think a lot of this stuff is unintentional, but this is what happens when it gets out, when it gets released. I mean, we are fortunate in Erie County that at least on 2 of our tributaries that go through the town, we have these things called litter booms, which it's like a series of floats that extend across the river, almost like an arm. And so as the river is flowing, it pushes all of the trash into these containment units. And then that's where we've been going and digging the stuff out. Normally the city, digs it out and just takes it to a landfill. Although, our landfill highest point in Erie County, do we really want to be filling it up with perfectly good footballs, and perfectly good happy birthday balloons? It's much better if these things just don't end up that way in these locations to begin with. And not all waterways have these things, right? I mean, a litter boom these were installed in the 1980s, tons of thousands of dollars, a lot of manpower to empty these things out. Which really kind of gets to the bigger issue, thinking about the fact that right now a lot of the weight of this is borne by the taxpayer, right? You're paying people to clean things out of storm drains, right? And storm drains, they can get caught, you can get flooding because of that, right? Paying people to clean them out of litter booms. and in order to keep this stuff out of our waterway. And really the ultimate solution is for it just not to end up down a storm drain, for it to not end up in a litter boom, right? And then that ends up saving us all and allowing, you know, our tax dollars to either be better spent or maybe our tax burden goes down a little bit, right? That would be great.
Yeah, and so again, we shared these plastics that, you know, break down, get smaller and smaller. Do plastics ever decompose all the way?
That's a good question. I mean, eventually, but we're talking like current estimates put it in like decades to centuries before it completely mineralizes. Unlike, for example, in those napkins that you were talking about, actually would completely mineralize. So they would be back to carbon and nitrogen and oxygen within weeks. Right. So you think about weeks versus decades or centuries, you know, it's a whole different kind of ballpark. And so this is why we really say that plastics don't degrade. Instead, they just break into ever smaller pieces. And of course, the problem with that is that ever smaller pieces are much more easily ingested, right? And so just in the last year, right, we had a story talking about how we found microplastics in people's blood. We've found it in the deepest parts of your lungs because it's in our air and we're breathing this stuff in. Last year it was found in the placental boundary, so both on the maternal side and the fetal side. So really kind of no doubt that these things are making their way not only from like the mother's blood, but across the placenta boundary and into a fetus before it's even born, right? And so really kind of the front line of this is kind of understanding what are the impacts of those microplastics that are within living organisms. What are the impacts of that? And it's complicated, you know, I mean, because it depends. We have fragments, we have fibers, we have pellets, you know, we have all these different shapes of microplastics, in addition to the fact that we have polyethylene and polypropylene and polystyrene and polyvinyl chloride. So you have all these different types of polymers. And then you have all of the additives that are on top of it. And so really kind of fully understanding what is the impact is honestly, it's going to take decades. So, you know, my kind of philosophy is I think that we have enough information now to take a much more, you know, precautious approach, right? Much more cautious, and really kind of be thinking about our relationship with this material. I'm personally not anti-plastic. I am anti-stupid plastic, as I like to say.
And some single-use plastics where we could really, like you said, you know, in certain industries, plastics are crucial. And then for single-use plastics, we can certainly take our own, you know, reusable coffee cup or our own grocery bag to the store. I mean, we can start making changes at home to, you know, eliminate the non-essential plastic.
Exactly. And that's really what I advocate for. And yeah, so I think that's a good, crucial first step, you know, and thinking about these things. So.
And what can we do? Again, we think that, and I don't know if there's a great solution. You know, maybe it's not the cigarettes being thrown out the window, maybe it's the toys or whatnot. What do you think we can do to prevent some of these big items from ending up in the litter boom? And like you said, causing flooding and causing issues. What can we do?
Well, I mean, I think a big part of it is us just being much more aware of our usage of these materials and when they, you know, where they end up. So parents teaching their kids to pick up. You know, one thing that we've been finding a lot of are these dog poop bags in our litter booms, and beside it being just disgusting, that's a place where you go, okay, this should not be in a storm drain, right? It's people picking up their dog poop in these bags and then throwing them down. I think they literally throw them down the storm drain thinking that somehow it's cleaned up, but storm drains go directly to a body of water. They don't go through a wastewater treatment plant. So there isn't anything cleaning them out.
Yeah, so you're saying a storm drain is not a landfill.
I am saying a storm drain is not a landfill or a trash can, right? So, you know, and I see this at Wintergreen Gorge, right? We installed a dog poop bag station, right, where you can get the poop bags on your way into the gorge, and people leave them along the trail, or they leave them at the very front underneath the dog poop bag station. There's no container there. They just leave them on the ground. And I guess they assume that somebody's coming through and picking these up. But if it rains or if there's a windstorm, those things, I mean, it's right next to 4 Mile Creek, and 4 Mile Creek goes directly to Lake Erie. So those things are going to end up directly in the bodies of water, and that plastic doesn't degrade. It doesn't biodegrade. And so, you know, just kind of having, I think, more thought about how you use things, where they end up, making sure that things are properly disposed of, really being, you know, conscientious.
Yeah,
you know?
and as being a dog owner, you know, I think they make now little like contraptions. Like I get that you don't want to hold your dog's poop the entire time you're walking. I don't either. But they make little contraptions that you can attach to the leash where you can hold it until you find a trash can. Or gosh, you know, take some sort of bag with you, attach it to the leash. You know, that way the leash is holding the poop while you're walking, and maybe you can keep walking a little bit longer, you know, and enjoy your time. But I want to talk about, you do a lot of research and a lot of outreach. You're working on something, litter critter promotion. What is that?
So we have this you know, research project going on that has me in the litter booms, and my colleague Varun Kasaranini from Gannon University has been in storm drains. We're now moving into looking at street sweepers and various green infrastructure in quantifying the amount of plastic that we're finding, both macro, big things, and micro plastics that you mentioned earlier. And, you know, we're gathering all this data, and, you know, as a scientist, like, I'm always wanting to share what we're finding, right? And part of that is through peer-reviewed journal articles, but I'm guessing most people are not sitting at home reading those at night, unless you're having trouble sleeping, maybe. And so I was approached by the Erie County Conservation District, and we came up with this idea of creating a website. It's called erielittercritters.com. And it's a place where we'll be sharing out our data. So right now, it's the data portion of the website is not populated. The website itself is live, and it has some information there. Encourages people to participate in various kind of cleanup events that Lynn will be talking about. In the fall, as we start to get our data in the right format to get it uploaded onto that website, people can go to erielittercritters.com and be looking at what we're finding. A little spoiler, it's a lot of bottles. A lot of bottles. That is the number one thing that we're finding, is these, you know, types of bottles, juice boxes. That's the number one thing. And second to that is various food wrappers. But to kind of look at that data and kind of think about it in a little bit more detail, that'll be a place where they can go. And it's got, you know, we've turned each one of our catchment devices into cute little critters. So there's some little animated characters that we're thinking, you know, in the long term, maybe we can do something with that, right? Create these, you know, critters that go out into schools and talk about trash and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think right now adults know we shouldn't litter, and again, we're not trying to, but again, we're finding a lot of kids' toys here, and I think we do need to re-educate young children again, and I know it's a conversation we have all the time, you know, in our household with my daughter, and we're walking through a parking lot, and she is devastated to find litter anywhere we go, and she points it out, and, you know, and we talk about it, but I do think starting to educate our youth again is the right answer. I think it's the right place to start.
It's a constant. You know, I work at a college, and I have for 20 years, and you know, it's frustrating because, you know, it's something that every year we have to be doing, right? Because every year we're getting a new cohort of students, right? So you have this idea that, like, once you educate your population, that you can be done and you can move on to the next thing. But nope, you know, there's always a new cohort coming in. We always have students transferring in, transferring out. And so education is just a constant kind of beat of the drum that we have to be doing. And part of that is the complication of the fact that, of course, recycling rules change based upon, because they are based upon markets, right? So recently I've been going door to door talking about glass recycling, and and I totally get people are frustrated. Yeah, why don't we recycle glass curbside? And I'm like, because the markets.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, but it is a market-driven, kind of reality.
Business. And it is. It's a business. They have to have somebody buy that bale back from them, that recycled bale back from them. But Sam, we are going to chat with Lynn about what we can do to prevent litter and what we can do to tackle litter through events and whatnot. But what I want to ask while you're still here is, what's the takeaway message? What do you want our audience to know?
I think our takeaway message is really, I guess it's twofold. One, to be kind of rethinking your relationship with plastics and finding ways to decrease your use of plastics in your own life. And then two, to be more conscientious with those items that you do have. Be thinking about where your bits of plastic are going to end up, and be thinking of ways that you can make sure that they don't end up where they don't belong.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sam, again, for all of your research, for all of your hard work, and for sharing this information with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
As we learned from Sam Mason, lake and stream side trash and litter is unsightly but entirely preventable. So we have brought Lynn Armel, the Sustainability Coordinator for Erie County. We have brought her onto the show to talk about how we can fix this issue. What can we do through litter cleanups, and what are some of the other projects you have been working on to address the litter problem that we have really everywhere, but primarily in streams and lakes?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
So Lynn, okay, so we have coming up, we know that plastic bottles are a really big issue. And so coming up, you organize the county-wide International Coastal Cleanup. Can you tell our viewers about that event?
Sure. So every year it's the third Saturday of September, and we get groups together. We usually have 20 different sites throughout the county, and people volunteer and sign up for a site, and we do a large community-wide cleanup. Last year we had 665 volunteers at 20 sites and collected 2,608 pounds of trash, and that was a span of 35 miles that we cleaned up. So this year we're hoping to do it even bigger.
So Lynn, where can people register for International Coastal Cleanup?
Great. So you can register online at the county website. If you go to eriecountypa.gov/ICC, you can select your site and register. Registration closes the week before ICC.
And you actually not only coordinate all of the sites to make sure that everybody is well equipped with supplies and whatnot, but you oversee a site where you pick up litter as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I started coordinating Ordox Road, which is a natural catch area for trash, just the way that, as Sam spoke about, trash going through storm drains and ending up in our waterways. This is an area where all of that trash is caught. So there is, it almost looks like a garbage island. There's just so much trash. We had 10 people cleaning up last year from 9 until noon. And when we left, it still looked like a garbage island. So I'm not sure if we could totally clean it up, but as much as we can do, the better. So this year we'll have many more volunteers there and hopefully make a bigger dent in the trash that's there.
Is it all on shore, or do you need waders or some, do you need to get in the water?
So there is a dive component for International Coastal Cleanup. They are in Horseshoe Pond or like Misery Bay. But at Ordox Road, it is all on land, and we don't go into the water. We're just right on the shore.
Okay. So Lynn, you've been working on a really exciting project, bringing a sea bin to Lake Erie, to the city of Erie. What is a sea bin, and how is that going to help us out here?
So the sea bin is a trash skimmer. It kind of works like a pool filter, where it sucks the water into a basket or a net, and collects the trash and filters the water without trash out. So that can collect about 50 pounds, the catch bag of trash off the surface of the water. So a lot of plastic floats on top of the water, plastic bottles and bags. So it's able to collect that litter once it's in the water. I would say the best way to deal with litter is preventing it from getting in the water in the first place, in how we consume things and dispose of them.
Exactly. And so what would be your tips? Again, we've talked about how we think litter is unintentional. You know, it blows or we leave something out or whatnot. But what do you think people can do better at home to prevent litter?
Great. So I think tying your garbage bags well, especially if it's a windy night, making sure if it's windy that your recyclables aren't going to blow all over the street, or if they do, be part of picking them up. Let's see. And also just make sure that you're putting things in a garbage bin that isn't overfilling, especially down on State Street. A lot of the trash cans get overfilled right by the water. So if it's full, hold on to it, find somewhere else that it's not going to blow out and into the lake.
Sure. And I know that you had several locations that you were thinking about for the sea bin. Which location did you end up selecting and why?
So we initially put it in the East Canal Basin, which is right down by the dock, and we thought that would be a great location because there's so many people down there for public education to help people learn about the sea bin and the pollution problem in our lake. However, there's too much seaweed in that area, so our sea bin was being filled with seaweed instead of trash. So we just recently moved it over to the Niagara's Harbor on a floating dock over there. It's a little bit deeper, so we believe that seaweed should be less of a problem. And we're working with the people at the Niagara who are going to be emptying it and collecting data, and that's going to go on the Litter Critters website. The sea bin is actually one of the litter critters. So that'll be exciting to see what kind of things are collected in it. It's right where it is at the Niagara is right where one of the storm drains empties. So I'm assuming that there's going to be a lot of trash coming in from the storm drain into that sea bin. So that will be interesting to see the data.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I'm glad, we have, we want prevention ultimately, but we do have a couple things in place to help us, deal with mitigating it once the litter has already happened. So, Lynn, I just want you to share one more time how people can get in touch with you if they have more questions about the sea bin or International Coastal Cleanup, or if they're just, doing a litter cleanup and want to learn about, the best way to, get a group together and organize something like that.
Sure. So they can go to our website, eriecountypa.gov/recycling. There you can find all of my contact information. There's links to ICC and Keep Erie County Beautiful, which gives out free supplies for cleanups, gloves, and trash bags.
Wonderful. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it, and it's a great topic to talk about during the summer and the fall months coming up. And again, you're just doing so much to beautify the area. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Could I add just one more?
Sure, please do.
Thing? So this year we are also working with the International Coastal Cleanup. It's focused in the Lake Erie watershed. So this year we're also going to be part of the French Creek cleanup in Erie County, which is the other 49% of Erie County is in that watershed. So we have about 20 sites in Erie County for the French Creek cleanup as well. And that is going to be September 10th. And people can register for that at the French Creek Valley Conservancy's website.
Wonderful. Lynn, thank you so much for everything you shared with our viewers, and I really want to encourage everybody to volunteer for these litter cleanups.
Yeah, it's a fun time. It's a nice way to get out and give back.
Yes, a good way to spend your Saturday.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Viewers, we have learned a lot about macroplastics and microplastics. Again, knowing that all of it is entirely preventable by just putting your trash in the proper trash or recycling receptacles, or just participating and volunteering in a local litter cleanup. So I want to thank you for watching today and tuning into the Millcreek Government Channel. Until next time, have a great day.